Are you getting bored of delivering presents from A to B because you can't think of a better way to grind up to that new AMRAM wielding superjet? Well, never fear because I have the solution for you. Today's video sponsor is GE for War Thunder. Basically, it's just this little app that you download and you play some games on it, you do some like little tasks, and you get rewarded with Golden Eagles. Use my referral code NXSWK to get some extra Golden Eagles when you first sign up. It keeps your mind busy and helps shorten the grind. Link is in the description. So there is a little bit of a stigma surrounding the JF-17, and the reason for this is no doubt its flight model on the dev server. Now, it did have some absolutely ridiculous stall characteristics that didn't resemble anything you'd actually ever seen a plane do in real life, of course, as well as the fact that it can pull ludicrous amounts of Gs when it has a little bit of speed going. Now, I don't blame the community for thinking this, because I think the actual, like, the average War Thunder player sort of, that doesn't look into flight models too much, sees this kind of stuff, and then they just think to themselves, oh yeah, okay, it's a Gripen, just Gripen 2.0, right? It's an absolute UFO. Do the slow speed stuff, pull stupid Gs without losing too much speed. Oh, and look, it's also a squadron vehicle that you don't actually have to grind for, you can just kind of pay your way up to it. So to me, at least, it was kind of foreseeable that people were going to think this was just some cracked-ass plane. But then when it actually comes into life, they fix the flight model, they fix the low speed stall characteristics or whatever, and now it does still pull a lot of Gs at high speed, but I'll get into that a little bit later. The thing is, it takes at least 3 months to grind out a top tier squad vehicle like this, or near enough, close to 3 months. So I don't think this is something that's going to be going away anytime soon. However, you will notice very quickly that once you do end up getting your hands on this thing, it really ain't all that. Now, what do I actually mean by this? In no way am I trying to convey that this is a terrible aircraft and you should stop grinding it right now. No, that's not the case. This is still a pretty good plane. It's a pretty good package. You get really good avionics. You don't get a helmet-mounted sight or anything like that, but you get the good digital RWR. You get a pretty decent radar as well. You get a good weapons package. You get excellent ground ordnance as well, which I do have a little bit of gameplay of later on in the video. But the first thing you're really going to notice about this plane once you start rolling off the runway and retracting your landing gear is an immediate lack of power. Now, the first thing that might pop into your head when you think of where engine power might become a significant issue is BVR fighting, of course. Now, BVR fighting and lobbing missiles away from 30 miles isn't anywhere near as meta as some US mains seem to think it is in War Thunder, don't worry, but there are still a lot of situations where you might want to chuck your SD-10 a little bit further away than just arm's length, and especially with something like the SD-10, which doesn't have the same range as an AMRAM or whatever. Now, of course, we're not talking like I said, 20 miles, 20, 30 miles or whatever up in the sky. You might be on the deck, there might be enemies on the other side of that mountain over there, and you kind of just want to gain a little bit of altitude, maybe get up to like some of the higher Mach numbers, like Mach 1.1, Mach 1.2 or something, just to accelerate up there quick, chuck the missile off, give it a little bit of extra range, and then dive back just before the enemy missile hits you. And it's, BVR doesn't have to happen at 30 miles up at 25,000 feet every time. No, like stuff like this can happen like close to the ground as well, when there's mountains in the way and stuff like that. And this is something that the American planes do very well. The F-16 does this fairly well. Even the flanker's like not bad at doing this kind of thing. It accelerates and climbs fairly well. And when Gaijin finally decide to unnerf the radar on the flanker, it might actually be a really, really solid contender for top tier. But I'll save that for the next video. Now, when it comes to the whole close quarter dogfighting, CQB, BFM thing, whatever you want to call it, I will say Jeff ain't bad. Jeff is missing an HMD or an HMS, whatever you want to call it, which isn't necessarily the end of the world. However, I've been getting used to using the HMD on other planes, especially the radar one. So whenever I go back to a plane that doesn't have it, I do kind of start to miss it a little bit. But like I said, it's not the end of the world. It's just a few sort of niche situations where, it's like it might have gotten you to kill or whatever. But it's fine, you just end up playing around it. You get the vertical scan mode, so it's not the end of the world. Now, when it comes to the actual flight performance in like a dogfight situation, I gotta be kind of careful with what I say here, because the thing is, when you're fighting someone in a 1v1, like you guys are in a custom match, you're doing the duel thing, it's a controlled environment, both of you are on min fuel, guns only, or you only take 2 missiles or whatever. The JF-17 it's going to be a really, really tough fight, because the thing with this plane is it doesn't really do anything better than any of the other top tiers. It's just kind of mediocre. It does everything fairly well, but it doesn't really excel in any of these sort of situations. So what ended up happening yesterday when I dueled Simply Sinful in his F-16, he just sort of ended up sticking to the rate fight and obviously ended up outrating me, and then, you know, it gets me on the defensive, and you know, a whole bunch of things happen from there. With the Mirage 2000, it was the same thing. Basically, I start to outrate the thing, and then once the micas start coming, it kind of forces me close, because you don't get a lot of countermeasures, so you run out of chaff fairly quickly as well. And then once you're in close quarters, you know, the Mirage is obviously just a little bit better there. So now this is in a controlled environment. When it comes to EC, you're always going to be on different fuel loads. There's a lot more improvisation. You're not always merging at the perfect speeds, and I think it does definitely do a lot better in EC, just because the one advantage that the JF-17 has, this is where the insanely high G pulling sort of comes in. So what you can do is you can actually whip the nose around fairly quickly. You don't have to watch your speed too much at the merge, so you can be merging at like, I don't know, 1200 kph or something like that. Whip the nose around fairly quickly. Obviously you got to be careful with the whole blacking out thing, but you're not going to be making, you know, you're not going to have a turn circle the size of a 747 like you do in something like an F-16 or a Gripen if you come in a little bit too fast. So you can get that early nose position like fairly quickly against someone who isn't, you know, really ready for the merge. Obviously, if you merge with someone who's on min fuel, he's controlled his speed and everything like that, then you're going to run into more trouble there. But this plane's quite good at converting its airspeed into nose authority. The problem is, once the other plane gets down to its, like, you know, proper turn speed, and the other plane sort of gets set up for the fight, then that's when you start kind of losing. But for those first couple of turns, the JF-17 gives you some really good sort of opportunities. The problem is capitalizing on these opportunities. The gun that you get is the GSH-23, which is the water pistol that the MiG-21 and the MiG-23 get, and the J-10 as well. So its long-range shots are a bit, you know, iffy. If you can pull them off, great, but you know, most of the time you probably won't. The PL-5E2 is, in my opinion, it's not a bad missile, but it is the worst of the top tier Fox 2s, I would say. The problem with it is it gets the same IRCCM that the Magic 2 and the R73 gets, so the gate whips one. But it flies straight for half a second when you fire it, so off-ball sight shots are just kind of, you know, just forget about them. So that is a bit of an issue with the missile. And then obviously you don't get the helmet mounted sight, so firing off your SD-10s, your radar guided missile. The SD-10, by the way, is just the export version of the PL-12, and in the files they're basically the exact same, they're copy-paste. So getting them off quickly is going to take a little bit longer without the helmet mounted sight as well. The flight model on this thing can also be kind of deceiving, as sort of making you think that it's this machine that can pull funny amounts of AOA and stupid amounts of Gs and stuff, and it can do that if it has some speed, but once you get down to, I want to say, like 330 to 350 kph, around that kind of speed range, it does turn into a little bit of a brick, at least to the point where something like an F-16 is going to have more nose authority than you. So if you are going to be slow speed fighting, try and stay away from stall fights, and always try and stay above at least 350 or something, just to be safe. Now, I know that was a lot of information to chuck at you there, so the main thing is just like, yes, other planes can do certain things better than you, and if you merge with someone and they play their plane absolutely perfectly, then yeah, there's probably not going to be a lot that you can do in that kind of situation. But on the plus side, you don't merge with Tom Cruise every single time, so my advice would just be, every time you do, you know, have the opportunity for a fight, just take it. You know, at the end of the day, it's a game, who cares if you die? However, if you are one of those people that do actually care whenever they die because you care about your KD or whatever it may be, how do you actually play this plane? Well, obviously, the default thing to do is, when there's a plane that doesn't quite perform how you want it to, is you start ratting around. And I can give you an example in this next clip of how ratting like that works. Now, you saw that I saw a couple of people in the A point, or it was called out to me because I was playing with a few people here. I don't actually remember. But whatever the thing is I made the decision to not attack them from that angle there, because they actually knew I was coming from there, because they could see me on their radar. My RWR tells me this, of course. So what I did, stayed low, came in from a different angle, used the mountain here as cover, and as I come over the top of the mountain crest here, they had absolutely no clue where I was. I fire off both of the SD-10s, fairly close range. They didn't have a lot of time to react. Both of them hit. and I go back into the mountains. Now, if I'd engaged them when I first saw them there, they definitely would have seen me both. I would have had potentially 2 enemies fighting me at the same time there. Both of them have A9Ms, which are both missiles have IRCCM systems that absolutely eat up flares. And considering the limited countermeasure count on this plane as well, it's just not a situation I really want to find myself in. So, I play it smart, duck below cover, coming from a different angle where they're not expecting it, and then sort of shoot at them when they're not looking, right? Anyway, in this next clip here, you can see that an enemy plane popped up really close on my radar and on my RWI. He ended up firing an AMRAAM at me. I ended up firing an SD-10 back. We both dodged the missiles that we shot at each other. Now, I'm going to turn back into these mountains here, because this is where I just assume he sort of turned to. I'm going to keep the radar on here, even though that's not the best idea all the time, but in this case I just decided to risk it. Now, there are enemies coming from the north. You can see them on the RWR, which is why I'm staying below the mountain range here, just to break line of sight and avoid attracting too much attention to me. I have absolutely no clue where this person went, so I'm just going to assume they sort of turned back to base, but I could be wrong. I end up sort of scanning this like little canyon area because I figured, well, it might just be an area where they might like to fly in to avoid radars and stuff. So I spot another enemy over here. So I turn the radar off just to avoid detection. Then an F-16 shows up next to me here. Now this might actually be the guy that ended up firing. I don't remember if it was an F-15 or an F-16. But anyway, there's an enemy close by. Chances are he's probably seen me. So I'm going to duck below the mountain, try and just get the turnaround as quick as possible, and I actually end up getting pretty lucky here and sort of end up flying right behind him. I guess he just kind of lost visual there, but that's kind of why you want to play with terrain, right? If you can, you always want to turn around sort of behind the mountain. You never just want to turn around when there's no cover. This is why I despise maps like Denmark and Sinai, because they just don't. To me, this is like engaging gameplay. This is smart decision making. There's assumptions you need to make, like, where did the other guy go? Obviously the guy I was searching for earlier. I couldn't just turn the corner and just see him on radar straight away because there's a bunch of terrain in the way. So it's just a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more to think about. And maps like Denmark and Sinai, what's the other one? Smolensk. These really flat maps just don't give you this kind of gameplay. And I wish Sim had more of these maps right now, but it really only seems to be Vietnam and Afghanistan that really give you this. Spain does give you it a little bit, but Spain has a whole bunch of other issues at this tier. So earlier in the video I did say that I have some ground attack footage here as well, and obviously this is just PvE stuff, but EC is a long game mode. These matches can last up to 3 hours, and which means that they're not going to be absolutely populated all of the time. So you do get some slow bits in EC, and it does pay to do some ground attack or do some bombing in those kind of spots, because it helps you on tickets. And if you want to end up actually winning the match, you do have to do this kind of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the main focus of the game mode when it does come to ticket lead, right? PvP kills just don't really give you that much. So it can be kind of helpful in that sense. Now, how good these new laser-guided BRM rockets are. They come in rocket pods, 16 per pod, and you can carry a maximum of 4 pods, so that's 64 rockets. If you carry 2 pods, so that's 32 rockets in total, it still allows you to carry a full air-to-air loadout, so that's the 2 PL5E2s and 4 SD-10s. However, you won't be able to carry a fuel pod or anything like that with you. But this thing gets like a fairly generous amount of internal fuel anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. As to how effective these rockets are, I'm really not a CAS guy. I don't really play any ground up, but you saw me shoot at an AI T-80 BVM there, and the first rocket hit him in the back, it critted him, and then the second one, got the kill or whatever. So I don't know, you be the judge of that. I think 32 rockets is probably enough for this. I mean, I guess you can take 64 if you want to, but the problem is they're fairly slow, and they rely on you manually sort of guiding them in. Of course, I mean, it's a camera, it has like the auto tracker and stuff like that, so it's not too hard, but it means you got to sort of laser like one specific target for quite a long time, and it can be kind of difficult to get multiple targets in like a single run, so you're going to be circling back quite a lot when you use these. And I just find by the time you end up firing all 32 rockets, you're generally getting quite low on fuel anyway, and it's kind of time to go back. So you can definitely take your air-to-air loadout and you're not going to lose too much. The actual camera itself gets thermals. They seem like Gen 3 thermals. You get an absolutely insane zoom as well. It's like rivaling that of the helicopter zooms you get on something like the Tiger and whatnot. Overall, it's actually a really nice ground attack platform, especially for something like EC, and I'm sure this thing does fairly well in something like ground RB as well, or ground sim even. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you have the J10, and you want to use that for your air-to-air PvP stuff as well, that's absolutely great. And then you can always just have this in your back pocket, in your lineup, in case the match dies down a little bit and you do end up wanting to do a little bit of cast just to help on tickets. And of course this thing does also get the nuclear bombs as well, but you only get to carry 4 of them, and if you carry more than 2, you don't get to carry your SD10s, so... But yeah, overall, I'm actually quite happy with this plane. I think it performs really well for EC. I think it's very well suited for EC. Although it does have drawbacks that I mentioned. It doesn't do anything particularly well, or it does a lot of things well, sorry, but it doesn't excel in anything in any particular way. However, you know, if you have something like the J10, for instance, and you're just looking for a ground attack, or you're lacking one for China or whatever, you know, you might as well put your squad points into this, and yeah, in a couple months' time, you're gonna have it. If you want to buy it, you know, be my guest, you're not going to be able to research the whole tree with it. Of course, it is not a premium, but it is a fun plane to play as long as you are sort of fine with the fact that it doesn't do a lot of the work for you. You are going to have to be very hands-on with this plane when it comes to the actual flight model. Our final score was 22-1. It was a very unfortunate AMRAM-related fatality there on my part. Unfortunately, we did end up actually losing that match by 1,500 tickets. So even though we did do a little bit of cast, it wasn't quite enough. Blue side is still very, very powerful. Of course, it's such a popular nation. But you know, red is getting there. But like I said, that'll be the next video where we're going to talk about all of that. Don't forget to use my promo code in the description if you're interested in signing up for the GE for War Thunder app. If you're also interested in a sim-orientated Discord server, my one is obviously linked in the description as always. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers for watching.